One of Tony Khan's biggest goals in 2023 was to lock down the Elite to new contracts before they expired and before they could become free agents next year and negotiate with other companies. MJF often talks about the bidding war of 2024. I don't think MJF is going anywhere, but it would be a huge loss if they lost MJF to WWE. It would have been an even bigger loss for Tony to lose Kenny Omega, Hangman Page, and the Young Bucks all at the same time. And to lose 3 EVPs, having already lost one of them to WWE. It would have been embarrassing, just from a perception standpoint. And he had to do everything in his power to keep them. And there was some question about that, given all the drama around the CM Punk stuff and Brawl Out, and how that might factor into their decision. And I say decision, singular, not plural, because Omega made it very clear recently, where one of us go, we all go. Tony Khan no longer has to worry about that cloud hanging over his head, because it was announced this week that the Elite are staying with AEW for many more years to come. Justin Barrasso of Sports Illustrated broke the news on Wednesday morning to tie in with the 200th episode of Dynamite that night, that all 4 members of the Elite have renewed their contracts with All Elite Wrestling, with them having signed multi-year deals with the company. It was not said exactly how long the deals are for, but they are long-term. So I know Chris Jericho signed a 3-year extension. Not that long ago, Jon Moxley signed a 5-year extension with the company. So it's probably in that 3 to 5 year range. I can't imagine it's anything less than that. Fightful reported that the Dark Order just signed 3-year contract extensions. I can't imagine that he would have signed the Elite for anything less than what he signed the Dark Order for. He also re-signed Rush just the other week, so Tony has been spending some money here to keep these people under contract. The story also says that in addition to their work on screen, Omega and the Bucks will remain executive vice presidents. The story states Omega would have been a prize commodity had he entertained free agency. While so many other wrestlers dream of headlining WrestleMania, Omega prefers to pave a new path. He said, "I was careful to weigh out all options and was open-minded to all possibilities. I'm here to help whoever I can while I'm still around. Up to this point, I've made the choice to sacrifice everything in the name of pro wrestling. I can't say that my family or my kids influenced the decision to stay. I'm not married and I have no kids. But what I can say is that I am incredibly proud of my match catalog and the wonderful people I have met and continue to meet." If we're going to be honest, the schedule was a huge part of it, said Nick Jackson. "I have a wife and 3 young children, and seeing them as much as possible was a big factor. I'm not going to lie, the money was a huge factor also. At this point in my life and career, I just could not see myself being on the road half the year or more. I have so much respect for the guys and girls that are able to do that year after year. We, for sure, could have made memories in WWE, but what's more important to me is making memories with my family." Matt Jackson said ultimately he made the best decision for his family. "Working in AEW will allow me the most time with my children, and they're still at that young age where they need their dad home as much as possible. Having the strongest marriage possible with my wife Dana is so important to me." Dana, for those who don't know, I think she heads their merchandise operation there, but I know she works in that merch division for AEW. He said the entire Elite was going to make the decision of where we were going together. And that's what we did. We stuck together, which is not typical in the wrestling business. But again, I used the word family earlier. We're not just locker room pals. We're more like a family. And we did what the family wanted. Hangman Page said, "At this stage of my life, the selling point was the schedule. AEW's schedule allows me to be home with my family for the majority of the week and will ideally help my body hold up better in the long run, and the pay is good. AEW emerging as a legitimate wrestling company has helped drive up bargaining power for wrestlers and others who work in the industry. Making a long-term commitment to a still growing AEW, I felt was the best way that I could help continue that progress." And that is actually, I think, the most important point to hit on here. And some people lose sight of that fact because they're blinded by tribalism, and in some cases I think they're just stupid. But the key there is that having a strong, healthy second national promotion, it helps elevate everybody's bargaining power. If you're a big enough name, elevate your bargaining power when it comes time to either signing a new deal or signing that first deal. If I were an emerging talent on the independent scene, or if I was coming from one company and my contract was coming due and I had something of a name, boy, would I be fucking happy that AEW exists and it's not just WWE or bust. So when I say that AEW, the wrestling business, is much better off for having AEW around, I don't give a shit if you watch AEW. Watch whatever you want. I don't care. But you cannot objectively say that by having AEW around, that is somehow a negative thing overall for the wrestling business. It's not. Especially if you are in the wrestling business. If you're one of these people, if you're one of the wrestlers, you're very happy to have a strong, healthy number 2, even if you don't actually want to work there. Believe me, it's going to work out for your wallet. It's going to work out for your checking account in the long run. The schedule seems to be the deciding factor among all 4. They all talked about the schedule. They all talked about being home with their families or just being home more often. The AEW travel schedule was a lot more attractive to them than the WWE one would have been. And I can understand that with kids. Frankly, even without kids, I could understand that. Having to deal with airports and flight delays and being away from home, it sucks. So to make what I assume has to be 7 figures at a reduced schedule, to maintain their EVP status, probably have more creative freedom than at least a little bit more creative leeway than they would working for Vince McMahon. For all those reasons I just mentioned, it made sense that they would stick with AEW. But Matt and Nick Jackson, they were on Swerve Strickland's Swerve City podcast, and they made it very clear they all made a pact, all 4 of them, to negotiate together, and they went back and forth many times over what they wanted to do. Do they want to go to WWE? Do they want to stay in AEW? Or in the case of Matt Jackson, he considered retirement at one point. Nick said he had to talk his brother out of it. This was coming out of the Brawl Out stuff. But there were times where even the Bucks voted differently about where they wanted to go. Matt wanted to go to one place and Nick wanted to go to another place. And they all agreed that the majority vote would be what they would adhere to as far as where to sign. It's disappointing that we're not going to get Kenny Omega in the ring for a big WrestleMania match against somebody. Or that we're not going to get Kenny Omega against Seth Rollins, or Omega against AJ Styles, or Roman Reigns. But the word elite is literally in the name of the company. There's a comfort level there. They helped create this thing. They helped start this thing. Omega came in a month later, but still, he was one of those original names from the early days of the company. Had he left, it would have felt very weird. It would have felt very awkward. Cody leaving was a surprise, but it never felt weird seeing him in WWE because he started there. He was already a star in WWE before he went back. Kenny Omega has never been a star in WWE. The Young Bucks have never been stars in WWE. Hangman Page has never been a star in WWE. It would have been weird to see them all leave together. And also, staying with AEW, they could all still work New Japan if they want to. I don't know how that may have factored into their decision. In the case of Kenny Omega, we just saw him work Triple Mania against Vikingo a few weeks ago. So it's not even just Japan. He could work Mexico. He can, as long as he clears it with Tony, he can work wherever he wants. He has that freedom. We saw Jericho, right? Jericho and the members of the JAS a few months ago, they all popped up at a PWG show. Why did they do that? Because they thought it would be fun. Because they had the freedom to do so. They wouldn't have that freedom. You think WWE would let them work a fucking PWG show or let them work the Tokyo Dome? Carl Anderson did, because it was part of his deal to come back to WWE before he ever re-signed. That was a glitch. That was not a feature. Tony Khan did what needed to be done, because losing all 4 of them at the same time, I compared it the other night to WCW letting the Radicals just walk right onto Monday Night Raw. Only this would have been far bigger. You let those 4 guys walk free? What message does that send to the other members of the roster to see Cody Rhodes go to WWE and headline WrestleMania? And then they see Omega and the Bucks go, and if they're booked well, now you're thinking to yourself, hey, I want that too. I want to go there. You don't think that thought doesn't go through the mind of somebody like a Will Hobbs or a Wardlow, who just did an interview? Poor Wardlow. He just did an interview the other day talking about being off AEW television for the past couple of months and how depressed he's been. Now, I know when he had his car broken into all those months ago, he had his passport stolen, which is why he wasn't able to be on the Canadian tour. They went to Canada for like a month, so he couldn't be on any of those shows. But what about the months before that? They haven't been on that Canadian tour all year. What about before the Canadian tour? What were they doing with him then? Yeah, because Wardlow was doing so well, right? Even when he won the TNT title this past time. Right? Because Wardlow was doing so well. One of Tony Khan's greatest failures. Dropping the ball with Wardlow. He'd be crazy not to be thinking about signing with WWE. So while it seemed predictable that the Elite would all stay in AEW, evidently it was not as predictable as people may think.